Dr. Lisa Martinez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she knelt beside the strange crystal formation. The alien ruins stretched out before her team like the bones of some ancient giant. 3 months they had been digging on this remote planet, and today felt different. Today felt important. "Jake, bring the scanner over here," she called to her engineer. Jake Thompson jogged across the excavation site, his heavy boots crunching on the purple sand that covered everything on Kepler 442b. "What do you think it is?" "Doc?" Jake asked, setting down his equipment case. His young face showed the same excitement that Lisa felt building in her chest. "I'm not sure yet, but look at these markings." Lisa traced her gloved finger along the crystal surface. Strange symbols glowed faintly under her touch, pulsing with a soft blue light. "I've never seen anything like this before." Captain Ryan Mitchell approached from behind, his military training evident in every step. "My sensors are picking up some kind of energy signature from that thing. Could be dangerous." Lisa shook her head. "It's not dangerous, Ryan. It's trying to communicate." She pulled out her translation device and connected it to the crystal. The machine hummed quietly as it worked to decode the alien symbols. The crystal suddenly blazed with brilliant light. All three humans stepped back, shielding their eyes. When the light faded, holographic images filled the air around them. The images showed a magnificent alien city with towers that reached toward the stars. "My God," Jake whispered. "Look at the size of those buildings." The hologram changed, showing new aliens. These creatures stood tall and proud with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished stone. They wore elaborate armor and carried weapons that seemed to bend light itself. "The Vorthic Empire," Lisa read from her translation device. "These ruins belong to the Vorthic Empire," Ryan frowned. "Never heard of them. When did they live here?" Lisa checked her readings. "According to this, they vanished about 50,000 years ago." "But Ryan, look at this." She pointed to another section of translated text. "They were one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They conquered hundreds of worlds." The hologram shifted again. This time it showed space battles between massive ships. The Vorthak vessels were beautiful and deadly, destroying everything in their path. But then the images changed to show something unexpected. "What are those ships?" Jake asked, pointing to smaller, uglier vessels that appeared in the display. Lisa's translation device worked frantically. "They single quotes read ... human ships, but that's impossible. These recordings are 50,000 years old. Humans weren't even in space." Then the holographic battle continued. The human ships were clearly outmatched. Their weapons were weaker, their armor thinner. But something strange happened as the battle progressed. The human ships began to adapt. They changed their tactics, used tricks that confused the Vorthak forces. "Look at that," Ryan said, his soldier's eye catching details the others missed. "Those human pilots are using the asteroid field to hide. And they're ramming that Vorthak cruiser." The hologram showed human fighters deliberately crashing into much larger alien ships. The Vorthak forces began to pull back, but the humans followed. Even when their ships were damaged and burning, they kept fighting. Lisa's device translated more text that appeared beside the images. She read aloud, her voice growing quiet with amazement. "Warning to all Vorthak commanders. The species called humans shows unprecedented resistance to conquest. They do not surrender when facing certain death. They adapt faster than any species we have encountered." The hologram changed to show Vorthak leaders in what looked like a council meeting. The text continued to scroll past as Lisa translated. "Report from Fleet Commander Zethkal. We attacked the human homeworld expecting easy victory. We were wrong. These creatures fight with a desperation that borders on madness. When cornered, they become more dangerous, not less." Jake shook his head in disbelief. "This has to be some kind of mistake. Humans 50,000 years ago were still living in caves," but the evidence continued. The hologram showed more battles, more human ships. Each engagement taught the humans something new. They copied Vorthak technology and made it better. They used strategies that made no logical sense but somehow worked. "Listen to this," Lisa said, reading more translated text. "Personal log of War Prime Cashvan. I have fought 100 species across the galaxy. None disturb me like these humans. They should have surrendered after losing their first fleet. Instead, they built a bigger one. They should have begged for mercy after we destroyed their colonies. Instead, they attacked our supply lines." Ryan leaned closer to listen. His military training made him understand the implications better than the others. The Vorthek were scared of us. The final images showed something that made all three humans fall silent. It was a map of the galaxy with trade routes and conquered worlds marked in Vorthek symbols. But there was one system marked in red with warning symbols all around it. The translation device identified it immediately. "Sol system," Lisa whispered. "Our solar system." They marked Earth as Forbidden's territory. The hologram faded, leaving them standing in the purple twilight of the alien world. The crystal went dark, its message delivered after 50,000 years of waiting. "We need to get this information back to Earth immediately," Ryan said, already reaching for his communication equipment, but they were not alone in receiving this message. Deep in space, aboard a massive warship that dwarfed anything humans had built, another species was listening. The Zephyrians had been monitoring human communications for months, gathering intelligence for their own plans of conquest. Supreme Commander Thexver stood before his own holographic display, watching the same images that had amazed the human archaeological team. His forearms gestured dismissively at the ancient warnings. "Cowards," he hissed to his assembled officers. The Vorthak were weak. They had the power to crush these humans, and they chose to run away instead. War Prime Kethanol, his second in command, studied the tactical displays. "Perhaps there was wisdom in their caution, Supreme Commander. These humans appear to have unusual fighting capabilities." Thexver's eyes flashed with anger. "Unusual fighting capabilities? They are primitives with crude technology. The Vorthak fought humans with stone tools and simple chemical rockets. We faced them with plasma cannons and quantum shields. There is no comparison." The other officers murmured agreement, but Kethanol remained silent. Something about the ancient recordings troubled him. The way the human ships moved, the way they refused to retreat even when facing impossible odds. It reminded him of stories his grandfather had told him about creatures that were more dangerous when wounded. "Begin preparations for the invasion," Thexver commanded. "We will show the galaxy what happens when a species ignores the rightful authority of the Zephyrian hegemony. And we will prove that the Vorthek were fools to fear such a weak enemy." As the alien warship changed course toward human space, Lisa, Martinez and her team prepared their own journey home. They had no idea that their archaeological discovery had just sealed humanity's fate. The ancient warning that had protected Earth for 50,000 years was about to be tested by a species that believed themselves far superior to their ancestors. The crystal ruins stood silent under the alien stars, having delivered their message to both sides. Soon, the galaxy would learn whether the Vorthek had been wise or cowardly. Soon, the descendants of those ancient aliens would discover why their ancestors had chosen to leave humanity alone. Image. Description for Leonardo AI. A vast alien archaeological site on a purple desert planet under a starry sky with 3 human explorers in futuristic spacesuits standing before a glowing blue crystal formation. Ancient alien ruins with towering spires stretch into the background. Holographic images of space battles float in the air around the crystal, showing primitive human ships fighting against elegant alien vessels. The scene combines mystery and wonder with an ominous feeling of discovery. 6 months after Dr. Martinez found the ancient warnings, massive ships appeared in the skies above New Austin Colony. The farmers and miners who lived there had never seen anything so large. The alien vessels blocked out the sun as they descended through the atmosphere like falling mountains. Ambassador Helen Parker stood in the colony's main meeting hall, watching the news feeds from around human space. Similar ships had appeared over 12 different colonies at the same time. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted her diplomatic uniform. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission," said Communications Officer Tim Brooks. His young voice cracked with nervousness. "Put it through," Helen replied, trying to sound calmer than she felt. The main screen filled with the image of an alien creature. It had 4 arms like the ancient Vorthak, but its skin was darker and covered with metal implants. Its eyes glowed red in the dim light of its ship. "I am War Prime Kethanol of the Zephyrian Hegemony," the creature announced. Its voice was deep and filled with authority. "You will surrender your worlds to our rule. You have 24 hours. To decide." Helen stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Helen Parker, representing the human colonies. We're willing to discuss peaceful relations, but we will not surrender our freedom." Kethanol's 4 arms moved in what might have been laughter. "You misunderstand, human. This is not a negotiation. This is a demand. Submit or face destruction." Colonel Danny Rodriguez, who commanded the colony's small defense force, moved beside Helen. "And if we refuse?" "Then you will join the thousands of species that learned too late about Zephyrian power," Kethanol replied. The transmission ended, leaving the humans staring at a blank screen. Danny turned to his soldiers. "All units to battle stations. Send word to Earth Command. Tell them we're under attack." On his flagship, Kethanol studied the tactical displays. These human colonies looked pathetic compared to Zephyrian cities. Their weapons were primitive, their ships tiny. He could not understand why his ancestors had feared such weak creatures. "Begin the attack," he ordered his fleet commanders. "Make it quick and clean. I want these worlds taken by sunset." The first Zephyrian fighters screamed down from orbit, their plasma cannons lighting up the sky. They targeted the colony's defense, towers and communication arrays. The human defenders fought back with everything they had, but their weapons seemed like toys against alien technology. Sam Johnson was working in his wheat fields when the attack began. The 50-year-old farmer watched alien ships destroy the defense station on the hill above his farm. Instead of running, he climbed into his harvester and drove toward town. His daughter Amy met him at the main road. "Dad, we need to evacuate," Amy shouted over the sound of explosions. She was 25 and worked as a computer technician for the colony. "No," Sam said firmly. "This is our home. We're not giving it up without a fight." Amy looked at her father's determined face and nodded. "Then what do? We make them pay for every inch," Sam replied. The Zephyrian ground forces landed expecting to find scared civilians ready to surrender. Instead, they found empty towns and hidden traps. The humans had vanished into the countryside, taking their weapons with them. War Prime Kethanol stood in the colony's captured government building, studying reports from his field commanders. The major targets had been taken easily, but something felt wrong. "Sir, we're losing contact with our patrol units," reported Subcommander Vextel. 3 squads have gone missing in the past 2 hours. "Missing? How can they be missing?" Kethanol demanded. "We don't know, sir." They simply stopped responding to communications. Outside the town, Amy Johnson crouched behind a fallen tree with 5 other colonists. They had been watching a Zephyrian patrol for 20 minutes, waiting for the right moment. The aliens moved in perfect formation, just like their training manuals probably taught them. "Too predictable," Amy whispered into her radio. Her father's voice came back immediately. "Roger that. Spring the trap in 3, 2, 1. The Zephyrian patrol walked directly into a minefield that Sam had planted using mining explosives. The aliens scattered as the ground erupted around them. Before they could recover, the humans opened fire from 3 directions. This scene repeated itself across the colony. Farmers who knew every hill and valley used that knowledge against their invaders. Miners who understood explosives turned their tools into weapons. Mechanics who fixed farming equipment learned to sabotage alien machinery. Colonel Rodriguez led the organized resistance from hidden bunkers. His soldiers were outnumbered 10 to 1, but they made every shot count. They hit supply convoys, communication towers, and isolated patrols before disappearing back into the wilderness. "These humans are like insects," Kethanol complained to his officers after a week of fighting. "We destroy one nest and 3 more appear." Perhaps we should request reinforcements, suggested Subcommander Vextel. Kethanel's eyes flashed with anger. Reinforcements? Against primitives? We have enough firepower to destroy this entire world. The problem is these humans refuse to behave properly. What do you mean, sir? When we conquer a species, they surrender after we demonstrate our superior strength. These humans saw us destroy their defenses. They saw us capture their cities. They should have given up. Instead, they keep fighting as if they still have a chance to win. What Kethanel did not understand was that humans had a different definition of defeat. To them, losing a battle did not mean losing the war. Every small victory against the aliens gave them hope. Every successful ambush proved the invaders could bleed. Amy Johnson had become the unofficial leader of the Resistance's technical operations. She used her computer skills to hack into Zephyrian communication networks. Her father, Sam, coordinated attacks with other farming communities across the planet. We can't beat them in a straight fight, Sam told a gathering of resistance leaders. But we don't need to. We just need to make them wish they had never come here. The humans learned quickly. They studied captured alien weapons and figured out how to use them. They analyzed Zephyrian tactics and found ways to counter them. Most importantly, they shared this knowledge with resistance groups on other attacked worlds. Kethanel received similar reports from all 12 colonies under attack. Everywhere his forces achieved quick initial victories, then got bogged down in endless guerrilla warfare. The humans seemed to have an unlimited supply of fighters willing to die for their cause. Sir, we're receiving a priority message from Supreme Commander Thexver, announced his communications officer. The Supreme Commander's image appeared on the main screen. His expression showed barely controlled rage. War Prime, explain to me why these humans are still fighting after 2 weeks. Kethanel straightened his posture. The resistance is stronger than expected, Supreme Commander. But we have the situation under control? Under control? I'm seeing casualty reports that make no sense. How are primitives destroying our equipment? They're using unconventional tactics, sir. They don't fight like civilized species. Thexver's forearms gestured dismissively. Excuses. Finish this quickly, or I will find someone who can. As the transmission ended, Kethanel stared out the window at the human colony. Smoke rose from a dozen fires where his forces had been attacked. In the distance, he could see human fighters moving through the hills like shadows. For the first time since the invasion began, he wondered if his ancestors had been right to fear these creatures. The humans had lost every major battle, but somehow they were still fighting. Somehow, they still believed they could win, and deep in his warrior's heart, Kethanel was beginning to suspect they might be right. Image description for Leonardo AI. A human farming colony under alien attack with massive dark ships hovering in a red-orange sky. Human colonists in simple clothes carrying improvised weapons emerge from wheat fields and farm buildings. In the foreground, a middle-aged farmer and his adult daughter coordinate resistance while alien soldiers with 4 arms and glowing red eyes patrol between burning buildings. The scene shows David versus Goliath with determined humans facing technologically superior invaders. The emergency session of the Earth Defense Council lasted 18 hours. President Kate Williams sat at the head of the massive table, surrounded by military leaders from every nation on Earth. The holographic displays showed the 12 human colonies under attack, their desperate calls for help echoing through the chamber. How long before our relief fleets can reach them? President Williams asked. Admiral Steve Harrison studied the tactical displays. His weathered face showed the strain of command. At least 6 weeks, Madam President. Our nearest battle groups are scattered across the outer systems. 6 weeks, Williams repeated quietly. Those colonists will be dead or enslaved by then. General Nick Carter leaned forward in his chair. Not necessarily, ma'am. The resistance reports show something interesting. These aliens expected quick surrender. They're not prepared for long campaigns. At that moment, the chamber doors opened. Dr. Lisa Martinez walked in, still covered in dust from her archaeological dig. Behind her came Jake Thompson and Captain Ryan Mitchell, carrying cases filled with Vorthic crystal data cores. Madam President, Dr. Martinez said, we have information about our enemies. Williams gestured to an empty chair. Tell us everything. Lisa connected the alien crystals to the chamber's computer system. The ancient Vorthek warnings filled the air around them as holograms. Military officers who had spent their lives studying warfare watched in amazement as 50,000-year-old tactical analyzers appeared before them. The Zephyrians are descendants of the Vorthek Empire, Lisa explained. But they've forgotten why their ancestors avoided Earth. These archives contain detailed studies of human military behavior. Admiral Harrison read the translated reports with growing excitement. They documented our weaknesses, but also our strengths. Look at this analysis of human adaptation rates. The ancient files showed something that made every person in the room sit up straighter. The Vorthak had tested humanity multiple times, using small conflicts to study human responses. They discovered that humans learned faster under pressure, adapted quicker when facing superior opponents, and fought harder when protecting others. They were afraid of us, General Carter said with wonder in his voice. Terrified, Lisa confirmed. The Vorthek Empire conquered 1,000 worlds, but they marked Earth as forbidden territory. They called humans the species that improves through adversity. President Williams stood up slowly. Then it's time to show these Zephyrians why their ancestors made that choice. Within hours, Earth transformed from a peaceful world into a military fortress. Factories that built civilian ships switched to warship production. Scientists who studied medicine began developing new weapons. Children who played video games found themselves recruited to pilot combat drones. Admiral Beth Morgan took command of the hastily assembled First Response Fleet. Her ships were smaller than Zephyrian vessels, but they carried something the aliens had never encountered. Human ingenuity backed by desperate determination. The first breakthrough came when captured. Zephyrian prisoners were brought to Earth. Maria Gonzalez, a specialist in alien psychology, began interviewing them. What she learned changed everything. They don't understand us, Maria reported to the military leadership. To them, war is a formal process. You demonstrate superior strength, the weaker side surrenders, everyone follows. Established rules. And humans? Admiral Harrison asked. We don't follow their rules, we make up new ones as we go. Young engineer Luke Davis proved this point when he examined captured Zephyrian weapons. At only 22 years old, Luke had already redesigned 3 different human weapon systems. Now he faced alien technology that should have been beyond human understanding. It's actually not that complicated, Luke told his amazed supervisors after just 2 days of study. They focus too much on raw power and not enough on efficiency. I can make this better. Better how? Asked Dr. Sarah Kim, his project supervisor. Luke grinned. Faster firing rate, better targeting system, and I can make it work with our power sources instead of theirs. Within a week, Luke had not only reverse-engineered Zephyrian plasma weapons, he had improved them. His modifications made the weapons lighter, more accurate, and capable of rapid fire. More importantly, he shared his discoveries with engineers across human space. The Zephyrians received their first major shock when Admiral Morgan's fleet reached the besieged colony of New Austin. Kethanol watched his sensors as human ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Small fleet, he told his officers dismissively. 15 ships against our 50. This will be over quickly. But the human ships moved differently than anything the Zephyrians had seen before. Instead of approaching in the standard battle formation, they scattered in all directions, using hit-and-run tactics that confused the alien commander. Rachel Brooks had studied the ancient Vorthek files extensively. She knew exactly how Zephyrian fleets were trained to fight. More importantly, she knew how to fight them in ways they would never expect. All ships, Pattern Alpha 7, she commanded from her flagship. Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to win. The human ships attacked from multiple angles, targeting Zephyrian weak points that Luke Davis had identified from the captured technology. They used the asteroid field around New Austin like a 3-dimensional maze, appearing from behind rocks to fire, then disappearing before the aliens could respond. Kethanol watched in growing alarm as his superior fleet began taking heavy casualties. "How are they doing this? We outnumber them 3-1. "Sir, they're not fighting according to standard tactical doctrine," his tactical officer reported. "Then counter their tactics." "I can't, sir." Every time we adapt to their strategy, they change to something completely different. This was exactly what the ancient Vorthak had feared. Humans didn't just adapt to alien tactics. They innovated. Faster than their enemies could respond. Every battle taught them something new, and they shared that knowledge instantly across their entire fleet. The decisive moment came when Rachel Brooks ordered her ships to do something no sane commander would attempt. Instead of retreating when outgunned, the human fleet charged directly at the Zephyrian flagship. "They're attacking us head-on," Kethanol's weapons officer reported. "All ships, focus fire on the lead vessel." But the human attack was a feint. As the Zephyrian fleet concentrated their weapons on Rachel's ship, the other human vessels swept around behind them. Luke Davis's improved weapons tore through Zephyrian rear armor that had never been designed to withstand attack from that angle. 3 Zephyrian ships exploded in quick succession. The alien formation broke apart as commanders tried to respond to attacks from unexpected directions. Kethanol's flagship took direct hits to its engine core. "Retreat," Kethanol ordered, his pride shattered. "All ships retreat to safe distance." For the first time in Zephyrian history, their fleet ran from a smaller human force. The survivors limped back to their main battle group, carrying reports that would shake the confidence of every alien commander on Earth. President Williams received the battle reports with quiet satisfaction. The ancient Vorthak warnings had proven accurate. Humans were indeed dangerous when threatened. "How many ships did we lose?" she asked Admiral Harrison. 3 damaged, none destroyed." Admiral Morgan reports all objectives achieved. "And the Zephyrians?" 7 ships destroyed, 12 heavily damaged. Their commander retreated despite having superior numbers. Williams nodded slowly. The war was far from over, but humanity had proven something important. The aliens could be beaten. More importantly, they could be scared. Across human space, the news of the victory spread like wildfire. Colonists who had been hiding in caves and fighting desperate guerrilla actions suddenly had hope. The resistance movements that had been barely surviving began, receiving supply drops and reinforcements, but the real change was happening in human shipyards and laboratories. Engineers like Luke Davis were working around the clock, not just copying alien technology but improving it. Strategists like Rachel Brooks were developing new tactics that turned human weaknesses into advantages. The Zephyrians had expected to fight a primitive species with crude weapons. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that learned from every engagement and came back stronger each time. Supreme Commander Thexver received Kethanol's battle report with growing unease. The defeat at New Austin should have been impossible. His forces had overwhelming advantages in numbers, technology, and firepower. "How did they lose?" he demanded. "The humans fought differently, Supreme Commander. They didn't follow standard combat protocols." Thexver's forearms clenched into fists. "Then we'll teach them to follow our protocols. Double the fleet size, triple it if necessary. These primitives will learn to respect Zephyrian power." But in the depths of his command ship, Thexver began reading the ancient Vorthak files that his intelligence officers had recovered. For the first time, he wondered if his ancestors had been cowards or if they had been wise. The answer would come sooner than he expected. Image description for Leonardo AI. A massive space battle scene with sleek human warships using hit-and-run tactics against larger, more ornate alien vessels near an asteroid field. 3 months after the victory at New Austin, human ships appeared deep inside Zephyrian space. They came not as traders or diplomats, but as hunters. The war had changed, and the Zephyrians were about to learn what it meant to be hunted by humans. Sergeant Chris Miller crouched in the ventilation shaft of a Zephyrian supply depot, watching alien workers load weapons into transport ships. His team of 8 soldiers had traveled 6 weeks through enemy space to reach this facility. Getting here had been the easy part. Getting out alive would be much harder. Charges are set, whispered Kelly right into her unit. The expert sniper had placed explosives throughout the depot's main storage areas. Her hands were steady despite knowing that 50,000 enemy soldiers were stationed on this planet. Roger that, Chris replied quietly. Tony, what's the status on their communications? Agent Tony Lopez worked frantically at an alien computer terminal. The intelligence officer had spent months learning Zephyrian technology from captured equipment. Almost got it. The security codes are more complex than expected, but I'm breaking through. 3 levels below them, Corporal Lisa White monitored enemy radio traffic from her hidden position. The communications expert had been listening to Zephyrian military chatter for hours, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Sarge, I'm picking up increased patrol activity, Lisa reported. They know something's wrong, but they don't know what. This was exactly how humans had learned to fight. Instead of meeting Zephyrian fleets in open battle, they sent small teams to strike at supply lines, communication networks, and industrial facilities. Every successful mission made the aliens more paranoid and less effective. Chris Miller had volunteered for these missions because he understood something that many humans were just beginning to realize. The Zephyrians had made a critical mistake. They thought this war was about territory and resources. They didn't understand that humans were fighting for something much more important, the right to exist without alien masters. Detonation in 60 seconds, Kelly announced. Everyone to extraction points. The explosions that followed could be seen from orbit. Months of Zephyrian military supplies disappeared in minutes, but the real damage wasn't the destroyed equipment. It was the message the attack sent to every Zephyrian commander: nowhere was safe from human reach. Similar attacks were happening across Zephyrian space. Captain Alex Davis led raids against alien research facilities, stealing their most advanced technology. Commander Sarah Bell coordinated psychological warfare operations that spread fear and confusion through enemy ranks. The Zephyrians had never faced an enemy like this. When they conquered other species, the defeated aliens either surrendered completely or fought desperate defensive battles. Humans did neither. They took the war directly to Zephyrian home systems, targeting everything that kept the alien empire functioning. Supreme Commander Thexver stood in his command center staring at reports from across his territory. Red markers on the tactical display showed successful human attacks. There were too many to count. How many facilities have we lost this month? He demanded from his intelligence chief. 47 confirmed destroyed, Supreme Commander. Another 33 damaged beyond immediate repair. The humans seemed to know exactly where to strike for maximum effect. Thexver's forearms trembled with rage. How is this possible? We have hundreds of times more ships than they do. We should be dictating the terms of this war. Sir, the humans aren't fighting a conventional war. They're treating this like some kind of hunting expedition. They don't want to hold territory, they just want to hurt us. This was the truth that terrified Zephyrian military leaders. Human tactics made no sense according to established rules of warfare. Civilized species fought for specific goals: resources, territory, trade routes. Humans seemed to fight simply to prove they could not be conquered. War Prime Kethanel had been demoted after his defeat at New Austin, but his warnings about human capabilities were proving accurate. He now served as an advisor to younger commanders who were learning the same painful lessons he had discovered. They're not trying to win in the traditional sense, he explained to a group of fleet captains. They're trying to make us give up. Every attack shows our people that we can't protect them. Every successful raid proves we're not as powerful as we claimed. One young captain raised a question that had been troubling many Zephyrian officers. But sir, what do they actually want? What are their victory conditions? Kethanel was quiet for a long moment. I think they want us to stop existing as a threat. Not just to surrender or pay tribute. They want to make sure we can never attack anyone again. This realization was spreading through Zephyrian society like a disease. Citizens who had lived their entire lives believing in their empire's invincibility began to question whether the war was worth fighting. Soldiers who had conquered dozens of worlds found themselves afraid of small, human raiding parties. The psychological impact was exactly what Commander Sarabelle had planned. Her team's broadcast captured Zephyrian communications, showing alien officers expressing doubt and fear. They spread stories of human victories that grew larger with each telling. Most effectively, they let Zephyrian survivors of human attacks return home to tell their stories. Fear spreads faster than any weapon, Sarah explained to her psychological warfare specialists. We don't need to destroy their entire fleet. We just need to convince them that fighting us is hopeless. Meanwhile, Dr. Kevin Brown and his research team were making discoveries that would change the war completely. Working in hidden laboratories. Throughout human space, they had been studying captured Zephyrian technology for months. "Emma, look at this," Kevin said to his assistant researcher. Emma Taylor leaned over the alien device they had been examining. "What am I looking at, Dr. Brown?" "It's a control interface for something called a planet killer, according to these files. It's a forbidden weapon that the Zephyrians inherited from the Vorthic Empire." Joe Rodriguez, another member of the research team, pulled up translated documents on his computer. The files say it was banned after the Vorthok used it to destroy 3 worlds during their civil war. Too dangerous for anyone to control. Kevin studied the weapon specifications with growing excitement. But what if we could turn it against their military bases instead of planets? Imagine the psychological impact if we destroyed their main fleet assembly facility with their own forbidden weapon. This was human warfare at its most terrifying. Not only did they refuse to surrender when outgunned, they actively sought ways to turn enemy advantages into weaknesses. Every Zephyrian weapon that fell into human hands became a tool for their own destruction. Supreme Commander Thexver made the decision that would seal his empire's fate. Desperate to end the war quickly, he authorized the use of the Forbidden Planet killer weapon against Earth itself. "Sir, the ancient protocols specifically prohibit using this weapon," his science advisor warned. "The Vorthak banned it for good reasons." "The Vorthak were cowards," Dexver snarled. "We will show these humans what real power looks like. Prepare the weapon for immediate deployment." But human intelligence networks had infiltrated deep into Zephyrian command structures. Agent Tony Lopez and dozens of other spies had been monitoring enemy communications for weeks. They knew about the planet killer before Thexver's own fleet commanders did. The information reached Dr. Kevin Brown's team within hours. Instead of panicking, the human scientists saw an opportunity that would end the war in their favor. "They're going to use their most powerful weapon," Kevin told President Williams during an emergency briefing. "But we've learned how to control it. We can turn it against their home system instead. Are you certain this will work?" Williams asked. Emma Taylor answered for the team. "We've run the calculations dozens of times, Madam President. Not only will it work, but using their own forbidden weapon against them will destroy Zephyrian morale completely." The plan that followed was audacious even by human standards. While Zephyrian forces prepared their planet killer for an attack on Earth, human special operations teams were preparing to hijack the weapon and redirect it toward the Zephyrian home fleet. Sergeant Chris Miller and his raiders had one final mission. They had to infiltrate the weapon platform and hold it long enough for Dr. Brown's team to reprogram its targeting systems. The odds of survival were almost zero, but that had never stopped humans before. "Remember," Chris told his team as they prepared for their final assault, "our ancestors faced worse odds with sticks and stones. We've got alien technology and a really good reason to win." Kelly Wright checked her rifle one last time. "Think the Zephyrians will finally understand why their ancestors were afraid of us?" Chris smiled grimly. "After today, I think they'll understand perfectly." The battle for the planet killer weapon would determine not just the outcome of the war, but whether the galaxy would remember the Zephyrian Empire as conquerors or as the species that was foolish enough to awaken humanity's full potential. Image description for Leonardo AI, a covert human special operations team infiltrating a massive alien weapons facility in deep space. Soldiers in advanced stealth suits move through industrial corridors while explosions light up the background. The planet killer weapon hung in space like a mechanical moon, bristling with weapons that could crack worlds in half. Sergeant Chris Miller and his team floated in their stealth suits just outside its defensive perimeter, watching Zephyrian guards patrol the massive structure. "Final systems check," Chris whispered into his com. His 8 soldiers had trained for this moment for weeks, knowing they were about to attempt something that would either end the war or get them all killed. "Explosives ready," Kelly Wright reported from her position near the weapon's power core. "Computer virus uploaded and waiting," Agent Tony Lopez confirmed. He carried the most important piece of equipment, Dr. Kevin Brown's reprogramming device that would turn the Zephyrian superweapon against its creators. The plan was simple in concept but nearly impossible to execute. They had to infiltrate the weapon platform, hold the control room long enough for Tony to reprogram the targeting system, then escape before the Zephyrians realized what had happened. "Remember," Chris told his team, "we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every human who ever dreamed of reaching the stars." They moved like shadows through space, using captured Zephyrian stealth technology to avoid detection. The aliens had built their defenses to stop massive fleets, not small teams of determined humans. Meanwhile, Supreme Commander Thexver stood in his flagship's command center, watching the final preparations for humanity's destruction. The planet killer weapon would fire within the hour, reducing Earth to cosmic dust and ending the human threat forever. "Sir, we're receiving reports of small energy signatures near the weapon platform," his sensor officer announced. Thexver barely glanced at the readings. "Probably debris from our construction work. Focus on the weapon's charge status." This dismissive attitude was exactly what Chris Miller had counted on. The Zephyrians were so focused on their grand gesture of destruction that they ignored the possibility of sabotage. It was a very human thing to overlook small threats while concentrating on big ones. The infiltration team reached the weapon platform's hull without being detected. Kelly Wright used alien cutting tools to slice through the outer armor while Tony Lopez monitored enemy communications. They were inside the weapon before anyone realized the perimeter had been breached. "Control room is 2 levels up," Chris directed, reading from stolen Zephyrian blueprints. "Tony, how long do you need to reprogram this thing?" "Give me 15 minutes with their main computer," Tony replied. "The virus Dr. Brown created is sophisticated, but their security systems are tough." They fought their way through corridors filled with alien guards. Human weapons enhanced with captured technology proved devastating against enemies who had never faced their own upgraded equipment used against them. The Zephyrians fell back in confusion as the small human team cut through their defenses. In the weapons control room, Tony Lopez connected his device to the main targeting computer. Lines of alien code scrolled across his screen as Dr. Brown's virus began infiltrating the system. 60% complete, Tony reported, sweat beading on his forehead despite his suit's climate control. Outside, Zephyrian reinforcements were arriving. The humans could hear alien voices shouting orders and the sound of heavy footsteps in the corridors. They had perhaps minutes before being overwhelmed. 80%, Tony called out. Almost there. Kelly Wright and the other soldiers had barricaded the control room doors, but Zephyrian plasma weapons were beginning to melt through their defenses. Chris Miller knew they were out of time. "Tony, whatever you've got, use it now." "Done?" Tony slammed his hand on the final activation key. "The targeting system is reprogrammed. Instead of firing at Earth, this weapon will target the main Zephyrian fleet." The humans fought their way to the escape pods as the weapon's massive systems hummed to life. They launched just as the planet killer fired, its devastating beam reaching across space toward the unsuspecting Zephyrian home fleet. Supreme Commander Thexver watched his sensors in growing horror as the weapon he had intended to use against Earth instead vaporized half of his own forces. Hundreds of ships simply ceased to exist, along with millions of Zephyrian soldiers and crew members. "How is this possible?" he screamed at his officers. "The weapon was supposed to target Earth." "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the humans," his communications officer reported with a shaking voice. President Kate Williams appeared on the main screen, flanked by Admiral Steve Harrison and Dr. Kevin Brown, Her expression was calm, but determined. "Supreme Commander Thexfer," she began, "your empire is finished. Your home fleet is destroyed, your supply lines are cut, and your people are beginning to understand that this war was a mistake." XNL's forearms clenched into fists. "We still have thousands of ships across the galaxy. This war is far from over." Williams shook her head. "You misunderstand. We're not offering you terms for surrender. We're telling you that your empire no longer exists. Your remaining fleets are surrounded by human forces. Your colonies are in rebellion. Your government has already begun negotiating for peace." This was the moment that broke Zephyrian resistance completely. Not the military defeat, devastating as it was, but the realization that humans had planned for this outcome from the beginning. While Zephyrian leaders had focused on winning battles, humans had been systematically dismantling an entire civilization. 6 months later, War Prime Kethanol stood in what had once been the Zephyrian capital, watching human administrators work. Alongside former enemy officials, the transition had been surprisingly peaceful, largely because humans had proven to be very different conquerors than anyone expected. Instead of enslaving the defeated Zephyrians, humans like Colonial Administrator Jenny Martinez were helping them rebuild their society. Dr. Matt Thompson led rehabilitation programs that taught former soldiers new skills for peaceful occupations. "I don't understand," Kethanol told Jenny during one of their regular meetings. "Your species defeated us completely. You could rule us as slaves or simply exterminate us. Why do you help us instead?" Jenny smiled, her expression kind but tired. "Because that's not who we are. We didn't fight this war to become conquerors. We fought it to make sure no one could conquer us." This answer confused many Zephyrians who had spent their lives believing that strength meant domination. They were slowly learning that humans had a different definition of victory. To them, winning meant creating a situation where the war could never happen again. Dr. Lisa Martinez, now Director of Galactic Archaeological Studies, continued her work studying the ruins of dead civilizations. Her research had revealed a pattern that terrified other species. Every major galactic empire that had tried to conquer humans had either been destroyed or had wisely avoided Earth entirely. "The Vorthik were not cowards," she explained to a gathering of alien diplomats. "They were smart enough to recognize something that their descendants forgot. Humans don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure our children never have to fight the same war." Admiral Steve Harrison, promoted to Supreme Commander of the new Terran Commonwealth Fleet, worked with former Zephyrian officers to establish a new galactic defense force. The irony was not lost on anyone that the species that had tried to destroy humanity was now helping to protect other worlds from similar threats. The final proof of human victory came when other alien species began asking to join the Commonwealth voluntarily. They had watched the war and learned the same lesson the Zephyrians had learned too late. It was better to be humanity's friend than its enemy. Ambassador Helen Parker, now Secretary of Alien Relations for the Commonwealth, stood in the new galactic capital addressing representatives from hundreds of species. Behind her, the Commonwealth flag showed Earth surrounded by stars representing every world that had chosen friendship over conquest. "The Commonwealth extends its hand to all peaceful species," she announced to the assembled delegates. "We offer trade, protection, and cooperation to any world that chooses the path of peace." In the audience, a young alien diplomat from a species that had been considering an attack on human space quickly sent a message to his government: "Change our plans immediately. These humans are not what we expected." Dr. Lisa Martinez watched the ceremony from her office, surrounded by artifacts from a dozen dead civilizations. Each one had made the same mistake. They had looked at humanity and seen primitives with crude technology. They had all learned too late that technology was not what made humans dangerous. What made humans dangerous was their refusal to accept defeat, their ability to learn from any enemy, and most terrifying of all, their capacity to turn former enemies into grateful allies. The ancient Vorthak warnings had been ignored by their descendants, and the galaxy was now a very different place because of that mistake. The Commonwealth grew stronger each year, not through conquest but through the simple recognition that humans offered something rare in the galaxy: protection without domination. As night fell over the Commonwealth capital, a new message was broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. It was simple, direct, and carried the full weight of human history behind it. The Terran Commonwealth welcomes all peaceful contact. We hope you choose more wisely than those who came before.